Okay. So welcome everyone who's here, those that are joining online and those who will watch later. This week is called Pekudei, which is starting in Exodus chapter 38, verse 21, and it goes through chapter 40, verse 38. And so as we look at this, Parsha, it's usually read with the portion before, which is called Vayachel. But as this is a leap year in the Hebrew calendar, an additional month of Adar, so it was actually read separately. And this Parsha is the last one of the book of Exodus. So, and a lot of what we're reading in this one, we've read before, but there is a difference. It seems like it's a repetition, but it's actually where the setting of the Mishkan happens. And so in this Parsha too, we see that it really displays the honesty and the integrity of Moses. So, and I sort of gave this one a different title. So if you see it online when you're looking to, I wrote on here, if you build it, he will come. So
okay, I get it now, yeah.
if you build it, he will come. So
The Field of Dreams, yeah.
Yep, Field of Dreams.
That was a good movie though.
So let's go to Exodus chapter 38 and verse 21. And that's where we're going to start. Okay, Exodus 38:21. And these are the accounts of the tabernacle of the testimony, as recorded as Moshe ordered by the Leviim under the direction of Itamar, the son of Aharon, the Cohen. Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Yehuda, made everything that Yah ordered Moshe to make. Assisting him was Olivav, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, who was an engraver, a designer, and a weaver in colors, in blue, purple, scarlet yarn, and fine linen. All the gold used for the work and everything needed for the sanctuary. The gold of the offering weighed 29 talents, 730 shekels, using the shekel sanctuary. And the silver given by the community weighed 100 talents, 1,775 shekels, using the sanctuary shekel. This was a beka per person, that is a half a shekel or 1/5 of an ounce, using the sanctuary shekel. For everyone 20 years old or older counted in the census, 603,550 men. So really, it starts with an accounting. And the word here, Pekudei, is accounting. It's not, because in Hebrew, sofer is to count. But this is the word like you're giving an account of. You're giving your records, your accounting here. And it's done at the conclusion of the work. And so think about how important this is, because how many times do we see people not giving an accurate account of things, whether, of their finances. And here we see that, too, Moshe is showing his honesty and his integrity, and he's showing the complete accounting for everything that the people had donated, which ends up, and I saw different accounts where one record even said it was in the billions of dollars, that was given. And so he gives an accounting of each one of those items and how they were used and how they were to be used and how much was left. And so he's showing exactly where it went. This is transparency. If you think about transparency, this is transparency in the government here. No, not like our government.
No.
So they didn't have Doge. Yeah. And so an accounting report, just think about reading an accounting report. It's very boring. But accountability is important. And there's something here that the Torah teaches us is called Adam Mu'ad Le'olam, which means that a person is always liable or responsible for one's own actions and behavior.
Mhm.
And so, and if you think about, corruption in monetary matters is basically a symptom of what's happening in a person's heart. And we live in this world where, there's a moral equivalency where there's no one's really wrong. There's not a clear line between what's good and evil. There's no, absolutes. There's no, accountability.
That's in the world. There's no line anymore.
Yeah, there's no line anymore.
No line. If you know God, do whatever people are doing.
Is acceptable.
Do it.
And so this is truly, a dangerous type of world.
Yeah.
And so when we think about that, this immediately brought to mind, and so I want to go to the Brit Hadashah minute. Let's go to Mark chapter 12. And this is actually in, the book of Mark and in the book of Luke, but I want to go to Mark chapter 12. And we're going to go down to verse 41. 12:41 says, then Yeshua sat down opposite the temple treasury, and he watched the crowd as they put money in the offering boxes. Many of the rich people put in their large sums, but a poor widow woman came in and put 2 small coins. And he called his talmidim to him, and he said to them, yes, I tell you, this poor widow has put more in the offering box than all of the others making donations. For all of them out of their wealth have contributed money they can easily spare. But she, out of her poverty, has given everything she has to live on. And so a lot of times when we think about accounting, we tend to focus on, well, who gave the most money, or, who's doing the most. But Yeshua's accounting is not really based on the dollar amount, but it's based on the heart of the giving. Because, to be honest, it's easy to give when you've got money to give. Yeah, it's easier to give. But yet we see here that what Yeshua says, that the woman here who had the least amount to give, hers was valued the most because she was giving out of her needs and not out of the abundance. And it was about her heart, And so, as we're thinking about this, we should be taking an account of our own lives. We are getting, leading into the season of Passover, this new moon, which will probably happen, Saturday or tonight or tomorrow. So we're, looking at 2 weeks out for Passover, and, you think about it. Think about just your life right now, just to take an account. Just, you don't have to share. But everybody in your head, just think, how much time did you spend this week in prayer and reading the word? Just think in your head every day. Okay. Now think about how much time you did other things like watch TV, scroll on your phone, working in the yard, whatever it is that you do for pleasure.
Right.
How time did you do that? Okay. And that's what I said. How much, I don't know. Did y'all hear Ken?
What Kenny said?
Ken said, he said more, he did more of that. So, and that was my next question, is think about how does that time compare? Yeah. But this is what we should be doing at this time of year. And, even in Romans 14:12, Yah says that he's going to require an accounting of his investment in us, because he's made an investment in us. And it says, 14:12 says, so then each of us will give an account of ourselves to him. And so, we think about, are we really
Wow.
making a good investment?
Wow.
Because you think about Yah's point of view. How frustrating that has to be for him to look down on us and think about, I put all of this, I gave my own son for this, and then what are you doing? What are you doing? And then this made me think of another passage. Let's go to Matthew chapter 25.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And as Eddie said, I'm going to make us all repent today. Yeah. So Matthew chapter 25. And I'm going to start in verse 14. For it will be like a man about to leave home for a while who entrusted his possessions to his servants. To one he gave 5 talents, equivalent to 100 years' wages, and to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, to each according to his ability. And then he left. The one who had received 5 talents immediately went out, invested it, and earned another 5. Similarly, the one given the 2 earned another 2. But the one given the 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. That'd probably been me. Because, I wouldn't want to, play with it, invest it, whatever. The one who had received 5 talents came forward, bringing the other 5, and said, Sir, you gave me 5 talents. Here, I've made 5 more. His master said, Excellent. You are a good and trustworthy servant. You've been faithful with a small amount, so I will put you in charge of a large amount. Come and join in your master's happiness. Also, the one who had received 2 came forward and said, Sir, you gave me 2 talents. Here, I've made 2 more. And his master said to him, Excellent. You are good and trustworthy servant. You've been faithful with a small amount, so I will put you in charge of a large amount. Come and join your master's happiness. Now, the one who had received 1 talent came forward and said, I knew you were a hard man. You harvest where you didn't plant. You gather where you didn't sow seed. I was afraid, so I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, take what belongs to you. And in verse 26, he says, You wicked, lazy servant, said the master. You knew, did you, that the harvest where I haven't planted, and that I gather where I didn't sow seed? Then you should have deposited my money with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would at least gotten back with interest with my capital. Take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10. For everyone has something. For everyone who has something will be given more, so that it will have. He will have more than enough. But from anyone who has nothing, even from what he does, will be taken away. As for this worthless servant, throw him back out in the dark where the people will wail and grind their teeth. Now, I got to thinking about this because, I know most of us probably have, were taught this a certain way. And, like me, we were taught, I'm assuming we were taught that this is talking about putting your talents to work for God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever gifts Yah's given you, you should be using them in the church or the congregation. But this is a parable. And if that's what this parable is talking about, notice what he says to the person who doesn't use his gifts from the Lord. He's thrown out into outer darkness. So if you have a gift of singing and you don't sing in the church, does that mean that you're going to be cast into outer darkness into hell where there's a gnashing and grinding of teeth? It doesn't seem like that would fit. Because really, I don't think that's what this parable is not talking. This parable is not talking about your talents. Talents represent, in the parable, things represent something else. The talents that he's talking about here is, when you go back and look at it, it's talking about your faith.
Mm-hmm.
It's your faith that you need to be putting to work. In other words, think about what James says. Your faith without works is dead. So if this person who's been given this a lot of faith should be manifesting in their life lots of actions that show and demonstrate that faith. Okay. That's why he told the men who put their faith to work, they were called faithful servants. Okay. And in James 2:18, it says, but someone will say that you have faith and I have actions. Show me this faith of yours without the actions, and I will show you my faith by my actions. You believe that God is one, well, good for you. The demons believe it too. The thought makes them shudder with fear.
So it says right there, you believe that God is one?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what he said?
Yes, James. But foolish fellow, do you want to be shown that such faith apart from actions is barren? So when we're given accounting, it's about not just what I say or what I think, because that Greek mindset is, I think, I have faith, but it is also about your actions. What are we doing with our faith? Do we show our faith with our works, or are we just hiding it away? And, we say we believe, but we really don't show any works for it. Because that's what the parable is really talking about. It's not talking about using your talent for the Lord. It's talking about your faith, using the faith that you have. Some people are given more faith. Some are given, a lot of it. So, I'm going to stop right here just a second. Okay. So, as we've looked in the past at the articles in the Mishkan, I want to go ahead and skip ahead in this portion a little bit. So let's go over to Exodus chapter 39. And I'm going to go down to verse 32. Exodus 39, verse 32. Thus, all of the work for the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, was finished, with the people of Israel doing everything exactly as Yah had ordered Moshe. And then they brought the tabernacle to Moshe, the tent and all of its furnishings, clasps, planks, crossbars, posts and sockets, the covering of the tanned ram skins, the covering of the fine leather, and the curtain for the screen, the ark of the testimony, its poles and ark cover, the table and all its utensils and showbread, the pure menorah, its lamps and arrangement for display, its accessories and the oil for light, the golden altar, the anointing oil, the fragrant incense, the screen for the entrance to the tent, the bronze altar with its bronze grate, poles and all of its utensils, the basin with its base, the tapestries for the courtyard with all of the posts and sockets, the screen for the entrance to the courtyard with its ropes and tent pegs, and all the utensils for the service in the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, the garments for officiating, for serving in the holy place, the holy garments for Aaron the Cohen, and the garments for his sons to serve in the office of Cohen. And the people of Israel did all the work just as Yah had ordered Moshe. And Moshe saw all the work, and there it was. And they had done it exactly as Yah had ordered, and they had done it. And Moshe blessed them. And so, Moshe oversaw everything that was done. And he checked to make sure, did y'all do it the way Yah commanded? Because remember, it was Olav and Bezalel that were creating all of these things. And it said, he said he saw everything that they had done, that Yah had commanded it. And so Moshe blessed the people. And when you look at how he blessed the people, this is where it's interesting, because they actually say that the blessing that he did was Psalms 90. And that's one of the few Psalms that was written by Moses. And if we go over to Psalms 90 and verse 1, listen to how it starts, because remember what they just did. They just built all these articles for the tabernacle. And Psalms 90 and verse 1, it says, a prayer of Moshe, the man of Elohim. Adonai, you have been our dwelling place in the midst of every generation. Which is, what did they just do? They just made the articles for the dwelling place for him. And he's saying, he's reminding him that you've been our dwelling place. Before the mountains were born, before you formed the earth and the world, from eternity past to eternity future, you are Elohim. You bring frail mortals to the point of being crushed. Then say, people repent. For from your viewpoint, 1,000 years are merely like yesterday or a night watch. When you sweep them away, they will be like sleep. By morning, they're like growing grass, growing and flowering in the morning, but every evening cut down and dried up. For we are destroyed by anger, overwhelmed by your wrath. You have placed our faults before you, our secret sins in the full light of your presence, and all of our days ebb away under your wrath, so our years die away like a sigh. So think about it. I mean, here you're talking about building the tabernacle, and the article of the tabernacle, and the sins are right there before you. You can't go into his presence with all of those sins. We've got to repent. And then he says, the span of your life is 70 years. If you're strong, 80, yet at best it's toil and sorrow, over in a moment, and then we are gone. Who grasps the power of your anger and wrath to the degree the fear should you inspire? So teach us to count our days so that we will become wise. So, and think about, it's about an accounting. We're to give an account of our life. And so, not only accounting of our life, but to count the days, make them important for him and for, with our family. So I have to go back. Yeah, I think it does.
Because I know most
Mhm.
most of them live there.
Yeah. And so when you think about what he, when he blessed the people here, I don't know for a fact that this is the blessing he gave, but it sort of lines up with exactly what this parashah is talking about, and them bringing the articles for the tabernacle, and then he blesses them. Now, let's go. Let's go over to Exodus chapter 40. And verse 1. And Yah says to Moshe, on the first day of the first month, you're to set up the tabernacle, the tent of meeting. Okay, so here we get the timing of when the Mishkan, the tabernacle, is set up. And it's on the first day of the first month, which is the first of Aviv, which is either going to happen tonight or tomorrow night on our calendar. So think about the timing of where we are in this parsha and how Yah lays it out. He knew how man was going to divide up these portions, and we're going to read them. And now we're sitting right here on the precipice of the first day of the first month. Okay.
Did they say it yet?
No, we'll look tonight. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's probably going to be tomorrow night, but don't. Okay. So Exodus.
It goes in the north. It comes out quicker.
Yeah. Yeah. It just depends on you. Okay. So I want to go down to verse 9 in chapter 40, verse 9. Look at this one. It says, take the anointing oil and anoint the tabernacle and everything in it, and consecrate it with all its furnishings, and then it will be kadosh, or holy. So the Mishkan and all of the furnishings were anointed that day, which was what? The first day of the month, the first month, which would have been Aviv the first. Okay. Now, if we go to the book of Numbers, we get more details about what happened here. So let's go over to Numbers chapter 7. And this is the hard part, because we want to read the Bible like it's a book. From, this is happening, then this is happening, then this is happening. And that's not the way it's written. There are things that are happening overlapping. So Numbers chapter 7 is the same day that we're reading right now. Okay. Because if you start at 7 verse 1, on the day Moshe finished putting up the tabernacle. Well, what did we just read in Exodus 40? Moshe finished putting up the tabernacle. Okay. He anointed and he consecrated it, all of its furnishings and the altar with its utensils. After anointing and consecrating them, the leaders of Israel, who were the heads of their fathers' clans, made an offering. These were the tribal leaders in charge of those counted in the census. They brought their offering before Yah, 6 covered wagons and 12 oxen, and a wagon for every 2 leaders and for each ox. They presented them in front of the tabernacle. Okay, so here on the day that Moshe finished the Mishkan and anointed it, they bring the leaders of the tribes bring these offerings. Okay. Now, if we keep going down, I'm skip down to verse 10. Number 7 and 10, it says, the leaders brought the offering for dedicating the altar on the day it was anointed. Okay, so on the day it was anointed, that would have been the first day of the first month. Okay, the leaders brought their offering before the altar as Yah had said to Moshe. They are to present their offerings to dedicate the altar, each leader on his own day. So here we see the leaders of the tribes bringing the offering for dedicating of the Mishkan on the day that it was anointed. So we're starting Aviv 1. Now, I'm going to stop here for a minute because what's interesting to me is when we look at number 711 in the Hebrew, 711, not like the grocery store 711. Okay, but yes. When you look at this verse in the Hebrew, and I'm going to read it in the Hebrew, and I want to see if you pick up, just listen for a word that really you think, what is that word doing in this verse? Okay. Vayomer Yadhe Vavhe El Moshe Nasi Echad Leom Nasi Echad Leom Yikbru et Korbanan La Hanakat HaMizbeach. Hanukkah, you got it, Debbie. Okay. Yeah. 711, number 711.
No.
Mhm. So Hanukkah. Okay, wait a minute. What?
Yeah.
Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Hanukkah is dedication. Okay. Yeah, you're for the dedication. Yes. So this is about Hanukkah is the dedication here. And this is about the dedication of the Mishkan. So remember what the story of Hanukkah with Yehuda Maccabee is about. It's about the rededication of the temple after the desecration of the Greek ruler Antiochus Epiphanes. So Hanukkah and the dedication of the temple that's happening here on the 1st of Aviv, which is probably going to be tomorrow night, maybe tonight, was starting on that day. Now, not only that, but in Numbers 7 and 12, look at what it says. Nachshon, the son of Amminadab from the tribe of Yehuda, presented his offering on the first day. So Yehuda was the tribe, the first tribe to bring their offerings. And what amazes me, because we think of, oh, well, this is going to happen. They're going to dedicate it and that's it. Because we think about, oh, if you go to a baby dedication or whatever, it's that one-time event and that's it. But if you keep looking through number 7, it's not just one day. There were 12 days of dedication. Each tribe was to bring their own offerings on a different day. And so when like I said, when you first read through Exodus 20, it seemed, Exodus 40, it seemed like, oh, well, they were going to dedicate the Mishkan. It was going to be one day and that was it. But when you look at number 7, you see, no, they're going to have 12 days of dedication. And that's what stuck out with me. Not only that, but the timing of all of this, because this is what I'm seeing. Okay. From what I've gathered from these passages, the Mishkan was set up on the 1st of Aviv. It was anointed on that day, according to Exodus 40 and verse 9 and number 17. And they began the sacrifices. There are 12 days of sacrifices. That means that they would have finished the dedication of the Mishkan, or the Hanukkah of the Mishkan, would have been completed by the 13th day of the month of Aviv. Okay. So this got me to thinking about the date and the timing. Because if that is true, then they would have finished the dedication of the Mishkan just in time to start slaughtering the Passover lamb for Passover. And this also got me to thinking about the timing issues and questions about Passover. You know, do you do it at the first of the 14th, as you know, the end of the 13th, as it's leading in the 14th, or do you do it at the end of the 14th, as it's leading into the 15th? And, you know, as I was looking into this and thinking about it too, I actually saw Lex Meyer's video, and he pointed out two things that I hadn't thought about. And I mentioned one of them to Eddie, but and you don't have to agree with me on this because I know people don't, but that's okay. But this is where I am in understanding my understanding. And okay, so one thing he pointed out, which, you know, I thought about it, but I never really thought about it this way, is first, what is Pesach? What is Passover? Well, it's a sacrifice, but what was it done for? It was a memorial of what? Of the death angel passing over their homes. Okay. So it was a memorial of the death angel passing over the homes of the children of Israel while they were still in Egypt. Okay, so I'm going to go to Exodus chapter 12.
So if you went all the way to the 21st day, they had a feast.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be like a 3-week revival.
Yeah, it would have. I don't know if y'all heard that, but he's like, if we started from the 1st of Aviv and we go all the way to the end of the Feast of Weeks, the 21st, then we had a 3-week revival. But yep, that's it. So, okay. Exodus 12, verse 27. Okay, you're to say, it is the sacrifice of Yah's Pesach, or Passover, because Yah passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt when he killed the Egyptians but spared their houses. The people of Israel bowed their heads and worshiped, and then the people of Israel went out and did as Yah ordered Moshe and Aaron. This is what they did. At midnight, Yah killed all of the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh sitting on his throne to the firstborn from the prisoner of the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the livestock. And Pharaoh got up in the night, he and his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a horrendous wailing in Egypt, and there wasn't a single house without someone dead in it. Okay, so in verse 29, we see this happen at midnight. Okay, in verse 12, I'm going to go back. For Exodus 12:12, it says, for that night, talking about Passover, the 14th, I will pass through the land of Egypt and kill all the firstborn in the land, and I will execute judgment against all the gods of Egypt, for I am Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. The blood will serve as a sign marking the houses where you are when I see the blood, and I will pass over when I strike the land of Egypt. The death blow will not strike you. This will be a day for you to remember and celebrate as a festival to Yah from generation to generation. You're to celebrate it by perpetual regulation. So what night are they talking about? The night of Passover. And so if Passover in Leviticus 23:5 says the 14th day of the month is Passover. So if the 14th is Passover, and that's the night that the death angel passed over their houses, and he passed over their houses at midnight, then they had to eat the lamb between the evening of the 13th and the 14th. Instead of the 14th or 15th. But no, but what I'm saying is, think about it. Because if the death angel, if passed over on the midnight, and if it's midnight, it's either going to be midnight of the 14th or the 15th.
But typically, the new day starts
at sundown. Right. So the date's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's saying that, then if it's at midnight, then if it's the 14th,
yeah,
then you had to have eaten the lamb at the beginning of the 14th.
Yeah.
Eddie said, I'm causing trouble. I shouldn't have started it.
Listen, this
Okay.
is the thing about it.
So I'm gonna go. Okay.
This is the thing about it. I'm just.
Can y'all hear him?
I'm just very thankful.
No. Okay.
It is not salvation issue.
Yeah, Eddie says, I'm very thankful that this is not a salvation issue right now. But this is why I said this is where I am right now.
And what I'm saying is, y'all left no stones unturned about the salvation.
Right,
These other things like this.
right.
Who is Melchizedek?
Yeah, he was like,
All
this
that
is not
stuff.
like, who is Melchizedek?
I
That,
mean,
you know, it's not a
I
salvation.
didn't know.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure.
Yeah, but this is where, that's
Okay,
why I
hold
said,
on.
this is where I am right now. And this is from my understanding, because if you look at Leviticus 23:5, and it says in the 14th day of the first month at evening is the Lord's Passover. And that word at evening is actually, which is Ben Harbaim, which means between the evenings. That's where the confusion lies, is because it's using the term between the evenings. So is it between the evenings of the 13th, 14th or the 14th, 15th? Now, Exodus 12:3, this is another thing that I found that's why. Okay. In Exodus 12:3, it says, speak to the assembly of Israel and say, on the 10th day of the month, each man is to take a lamb or a kid for his family, one per household, except if the household is too small for a whole lamb or a kid, then he and his next door neighbor should share one, dividing it in proportion to the number of people eating it. Your animal must be without defect, a male in its first year, and you choose it from either the sheep or the goats. Verse 6, you are to keep it until the 14th day of the month, and then the entire assembly of the community will slaughter it at dusk. Okay, so that word until, this is the word, part of the thing I think causes a problem is because this word we translated in English is until. So we're looking at it like, oh, you got to keep it up until the 14th day. So then we're going to slaughter it on the 14th day. So then it would be at the end of the 14th day. But that word in Hebrew is the word odd, which can really is translated up to, not really, not through, but, so there's up to the 14th. So if the 14th is the memorial of Passover, and the death angel passes over at midnight, this is why I think that the lambs must have been slain between the evenings of the 13th and the 14th, because the death angel passed over at midnight on the 14th. And then that's what I believe, that after midnight, sometime early morning, whatever, the Egyptians woke up, they find the death of the firstborn, and they gather their stuff, the children of Israel gather their stuff together, and they plunder the Egyptians, because Yah tells them to ask the Egyptians and they'll give you stuff on your way out. Well, if you just found the death of your firstborn children, and not just yours, but every household around you, they're wanting to get rid of them. So they're giving them everything they can. Just get out of Egypt, get away from here. And Numbers 33.
That's the best you've ever.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh no. Do I have a convert? Do I have a convert? Ken just said that's the best I've ever explained that one. What? Yeah, we ain't going there. Okay. Okay. So Eddie's just like, he's trying to stir the pot. Ken, I don't know if you heard that. Ken just said that's the best I've ever explained that. Sounds like a great. Numbers 33 and verse 3. And it says, they began their journey from Ramses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month. Okay, so they're leaving Egypt on the 15th day of the first month. But here's another kicker: the morning after the Pesach. The people of Israel left proudly in view of the Egyptians. Here's the problem. We've translated that the morning after. But in Hebrew, it's maharat. Okay, so, which really doesn't mean morning, because what is morning, Eddie? You know that? No, how do you say good morning?
Oh,
Boker Tov. What's morning? Boker. Okay. That doesn't say morning, does it? Tov is good. Boker Tov. Yep. Boker is morning. But this doesn't say Boker. It says Maharat. Mahar means the next day. It's where we get the word, you were listening to the song this morning, Bay Israel. He's not Mahar, he wasn't late. Okay, so that's where we get the word late from. Because literally it should be that on the 15th day of the first month, the next day after Pesach, the people left Egypt. Okay, so, and in that verse, it tells us they left on the 15th. Okay, so if we go to another place, let's go to Deuteronomy 16:6.
I think they ended up running up.
Yeah, 16:6.
This is like,
But at the place where Yah your Elohim will choose to have his name live, there is where you are to sacrifice the Pesach offering in the evening when the sun sets at the time of year that you came out of Egypt. So it seems to me that in Deuteronomy, Devarim here, that he's making a connection between the time that they slaughtered the Passover lamb is also the same time of day that they left Egypt, between the evenings when it's crossing over into the 15th. So I look at this that if you hold to the eating the Passover at the end of the 14th and going into the 15th, that if you think about when Yeshua came, then the meal that he had with his disciples wouldn't have been a Passover meal, right? Because he would have been slaughtered at the time of Passover. He couldn't have ate the Passover then. But let's look at what Yeshua says. Matthew chapter 26. And verse 18.
26,
Mm-hmm.
18.
It says, go into the city to so-and-so, or to whoever, to such a man, and say to him, the master says, my time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples. So as Yeshua himself is saying that he's going to keep the Passover there. But if he was slaughtered at Passover, then he couldn't have ate the Passover. Okay. And yeah, you can't. He said you could hear a pin drop. But
Yeah,
I mean, but if you think about, this is why I say that he did eat the Passover, that Yeshua didn't lie, because he was doing it at the beginning of the 13th, 14th. And, because I went before, we talked about before how historically these two holidays were merged into one. And that's why, rabbis do keep it the 14th going into the 15th, then they see it as one holiday. But, okay. So y'all got thoughts on that or no? I mean, no comments. Everybody's just in shock.
So you're just saying it's like a one-time thing that the Lord did that he moved it.
No, he didn't move it. I'm saying that he did it on the right day.
Okay.
That he did it on the right day.
Oh, but he did it at the beginning of he had the
yeah,
meal
because Orthodox Judaism does it at the end of the 14th and going into the 15th.
Okay.
And prove that, who else would have known but Yeshua?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeshua knows the right day, and his own words there says, I will celebrate it.
And is that the thing? Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the thing that's called the night to be remembered?
Well, the night that they're waiting for the Passover. Yeah, the night that you eat the Passover, because the Passover, remember, is separate from the unleavened bread.
Right.
So, but that's,
it's the
that's
same
where
day he died, but it's the night before.
No, he would have died the night after, because Orthodox Judaism celebrates Passover at the end of the 14th day going into the 15th. They combine
Okay.
really unleavened bread.
Okay, gotcha.
So they do it. So when you look at a rabbinic calendar, they're going to celebrate the end of the 14th going into the 15th. So they're combining Passover and unleavened bread. When
Oh, wow.
actually, I see that there are two separate holidays. There was Passover because they had to stay in their homes because the death angel was coming over at midnight on the 14th, then they had to have eaten the lamb at the beginning of the 14th.
Right.
And they stayed in their home after midnight.
Got it.
And then that morning, which would have still been the daytime of the 14th, because the time wouldn't have changed until sunset to become the 15th. And that's when they left Egypt.
I really appreciate this. It's just, yeah.
So that's where, but as I never really thought about it until I heard Lex Meyer say,
Les Miles, is he the one that he wrote the book?
no, Lex Meyer just does Unlearn the Lies is his pipe. Unlearn the Lies. Yeah.
So he was the one that.
He just made the
At first, he believed.
yes, yeah. And if you actually go back and look at on YouTube, yeah, if you look at YouTube, he actually has a video. I can send you the link to it, but he has a video where, and in the video, he just says, back 2017, he said, I was the other way. I agreed that it was at the end of the 14th, and this is the way I did. And he said he showed part of that clip where he went on there and made that video. And he said that, through more study, now I'm unlearning some things that I thought, whatever. And this is what but the way he said that was like, what was the whole reason for this? There was the Passover. It was the memorial of the death angel passing over on the 14th. And that got me to thinking, it was like, wait a minute, if the death angel passed over at midnight on the 14th, then they had to have eaten the lamb before that.
Now, do the Orthodox Jews, do they believe?
They combine.
Yeshua, but the believing Orthodox, do they believe that Yeshua ate the Passover lamb with his disciples?
No, because most of them are going by the traditional Orthodox dating of it. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, because you got to look, that's where the distinguishing is. People who hold to the 14th day, the end of the 14th day, and actually the 15th day, okay?
Yeah.
If they hold to that, then Yeshua's meal could not have been the Passover. So anybody that holds to that can't believe that Yeshua ate the Passover. Right. So if they're holding to that date, then he couldn't have. But if you hold to the beginning of the 13th, going into the 14th, then he did do it. Because remember, there was even, you look at the Essene calendar, the Essenes did it on a different date than Orthodox Judaism. They did it on the beginning of the 13th to 14th, which is what John the Baptist was. We've been doing it at the beginning of the 13th, 14th. So,
Well,
years. Yeah. Well, thank you, Ken. Almost got you? No.
Yeah, you got me thinking.
Okay.
I'm gonna say one more thing.
Yeah.
Sitting in this seat, the last time I was here,
Mm-hmm.
I said something that really hit me too.
Okay.
We were talking about Yeshua and God, if they won.
Here, I'm going to turn this around so that they can hear you.
All right.
Go ahead.
Last time I was sitting in this seat, Lisa said something that really helped me because we were talking about, Yeshua and God, are they one, are they two? And Eddie brought up, Jesus said, well, Yeshua said, pray, you say, pray, Father, which is in heaven. And I really struggled because, the Bible says just serve one God.
Right.
And if we're claiming Yeshua, it's almost like we're serving two gods.
right.
But I know it can't be right. But you said something.
Mhm.
You said when Yeshua, you said, how many thrones is in heaven?
Mhm.
One
There's only one.
says It says one says.
So when Yeshua ascended, he ascended into the bosom of Yeshua's basically what you said. And that brought a lot of understanding to me. And when he came down, he just came out of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh into a woman and was birthed as a man. And that really helped me. That helped me understand that more than a lot of
And
things.
only God knows how they do that. It's just such a miracle. We can't even, it's such a miracle how God can take that part of himself, that DNA,
Yeah.
Yeshua that he brought out, because we know
And Eddie's
he
just,
couldn't be the fullness of God, even though he was a man God.
Eddie was just talking
He
about how
couldn't be the
that-
fullness of
that
God
when
because he told
Yah
them-
brought out a
he
part
told
of
the
himself
disciples,
and
"Only God can
brought it
come
to the
you."
earth in the form of Yeshua, that it couldn't be the fullness of Yah because
Even though
it couldn't be
he's
contained.
still God,
But there was,
he's
it's still a
a
part of God, but
He
it was
he's
contained within his flesh, so
He said,
it was
"I go back
a
to
part
the
of it. So,
bosom of God,
yeah.
in God." 'Cause-
Yeah, and Eddie was also talking about the, where it says that Yeshua says that I go back to the bosom of the Father. So he's in the Father's
If
bosom.
it's
So,
Jesus, then where's God?
yeah.
It's God, God's got, Yeshua says, you pray, you don't pray to me. You pray to that God.
Yeah, he's saying too that Yeshua even
And
says
so,
that you pray to the
But
Father and
the
not
point in semantics,
to
because
him.
when
You pray,
to God,
but in
you're
the
praying
power
to
of his
Jesus.
name and what
To Yeshua.
recognizing what Yeshua did, that he
Right.
was the Mashiach and that what his
There's not-
coming did. So,
That's not where
So.
Trinity's not. And
so as we keep moving then, that's just all tying in on, how I tied it in with the dedication of the Mishkan, because if that happened, then they would have completed the dedication offerings through the 13th, and then the end of the 13th begins the offerings for the sacrifice for Passover. That's how I saw it. So, okay. And remember too, what is the purpose of the Mishkan? What's his purpose? In Exodus 25:8, he says, let them make for me a mikdash that I may dwell among them. And so he still has that same objective in the future. And, the Mishkan was finished and dedicated to Yah, and it was ready for the next Korban, the Passover offering on the next day. And so, this Mishkan is more than just this earthly structure. It was patterned after the heavens. And the Mishkan is like a learning tool that Yah uses, he's given us to teach us about how to become part of what this heavenly reality is. And, those who choose to connect themselves with him and his will become part of the body of Mashiach, which is, pictured through the Mishkan. So Yah's dwelling place is actually, we know, built of people. Our body is a Mishkan.
Yeah.
And there are two rabbinic traditions about the Mishkan that I find fascinating. And I put them here in the notes, and I wanted to read this too. In one, it describes the Mishkan as being a microcosm of the universe with the various parts of the world around us. But in another reading, the Mishkan is likened to the human body. And there are a few parallels here that translated in the Letters of Maimonides by Leon Shishkin. It says this: the holy ark, the innermost part, alludes to your human heart, which is the innermost part of your body. The ark was the main part of the Mishkan because it contained the tablets of the covenant. So too is the human heart the main part of the body. It is the source of one's life, knowledge, and understanding. And what does he tell us he's going to do in Ezekiel? He's going to write his word upon our heart. He says the menorah in the Mishkan alludes to the human mind. Just as the menorah gives forth light, so the intellect enlightens the entire body. The altar of incense alludes to the sense of smell, because it says that on the altar that we're going to put there's going to be a sweet savor going up to Yah. The sacrificial altar alludes to the intestines or the digestive system, which digests the food that enters the body. Because when you talk about putting those offerings on the sacrifice, when you're offering it, it says that Yah would eat it. It actually uses the word consumes, akal. The goat's wool hangings allude to the skin that covers the body. It is suggested here that the sanctuary structure resembles a human body, so that the human body is actually a sanctuary and therefore is to be treated and respected as such. Furthermore, we are each miraculously complex with an intricate network of parts working together for us to be able to breathe, walk, eat, and basically live. We don't need to look as far as the heavens and the stars to experience the all, because we are miraculous. Just as the divine presence filled the Mishkan, we too are dwelling places of the divine in our world. Our souls are our divine sparks. And so, I wanted to put that in here because I thought it was, an interesting picture of how Orthodox Judaism looks at their body too, as being a Mishkan, which we know that says it in the Brit Hadashah, and that Yah has an agenda. He wants us to have this intimate relationship with his people. And he desires us to want that relationship too. And our desire, moves us toward maturity. Like he's waiting for us to be set apart or holy there. So, yes.
It looks like to me, when you take these subjects, just like we were talking about 14, 15, whatever, and Melchizedek, I can name dozens of them. Do you think that y'all did this on purpose? Because what happens with these subjects?
Eddie was
Study,
yeah.
we argue the scriptures.
Eddie was asking all these
really
subjects that we look at a lot of times, like whether it's the 13th or the 14th, whether it, who is Melchizedek and things like that. He doesn't straight out tell us the answers. Why? Do you think that y'all had the purpose to make us get into the word and dig? Well, Proverbs 25:2 says it's to the kings, what he's declared, he's laid out there for us, but it is for our glory to dig and reveal those things. Yeah. So I think he does. I think he wants us to be digging.
Can make these things
much harder. Yeah.
Hard.
God's word is true.
Mm-hmm.
It's really one understanding.
Right.
I agree.
But we can make it complicated.
I think it's
and Kim was saying too, a lot of times we can get into it, we can cause things to be a misunderstanding when there's really only one way. But part of it is we put our own understanding in there, and we're trying to make it fit our own theology instead of what Yah had intended. So I want to go to 1 Corinthians chapter 3. In 1 Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 6, it says, I planted the seed, and Apollos watered it, but it was God who made it grow. So neither the planter nor the waterer is anything. Only God makes things grow. The planter and the waterer are the same. However, each will be rewarded according to his work. For we are God's co-workers. You are God's field, God's building. So here it says we're God's building. Well, his building is the Mishkan. If we go down to verse 16, 1 Corinthians 3:16, it says, don't you know that you people are God's temple and that God's spirit lives in you? So again, he says, we're his temple. We're the Mishkan. If I go over to 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 19. Don't you know that your body is a temple for the Ruach HaKodesh who lives inside of you, whom you've received from Elohim. The fact is that you don't belong to yourselves. Okay. I want to go to 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 11. You know, it's interesting. Sometimes people think, oh, well, you're studying Torah, but well, then you've done away with the New Testament. But look how many passages we're going to in the New Testament here. You know, we're just we're just complimenting. Yeah, we're just you're throwing away. Put it together. Yeah.
One can't say
Something contrary to the other. Yeah.
It don't matter.
Okay. 2 Corinthians chapter 6. I'm going to go down to verse 11. Dear friends in Corinth, we have spoken frankly to you. We have opened our hearts wide. Verse 12. Any constraint you feel has not been imposed by us, but by your own inner selves. So just to be fair, I'm using the language of children. Open wide your hearts too. Do not yoke yourselves together in a team with unbelievers. For how can righteousness and lawlessness be partners? What fellowship does light have with darkness? What harmony can there be between the Mashiach and Belial? What does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? What agreement can there be between the temple of God and idols? For we are the temple of the living God. As God said, I will house myself in them and I will walk among them. I will be their God and they will be my people. Therefore, Yah says, go out from their midst, separate yourselves, don't even touch what is unclean. Then I myself will receive you. So if we think about, we are his temple. We're his temple today.
And that was 2 Corinthians 7.
Chapter 6, and I read verse 11 through 17. So think about this, okay? If we're his temple today, are we defiling it or are we setting it apart so that his presence can dwell here? Think about the things we're putting in our bodies. What people are we linking ourselves with? Are they defiling it or setting it apart? And I think, too, it's about coming together, because if it takes each one of us to work in unity with the other. And I think that's part of, when he's talking about that we all have different giftings, we all have different callings, but they all work together. You had the post, you had you had the hooks, you had the sockets, but they all work together to make the Mishkan. In Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 17. Also, when he came, he announced as good news, shalom to you, and far off shalom to those nearby. News through him that we both have access in one spirit to the Father. So then, you are no longer foreigners and strangers. On the contrary, you are fellow citizens with Elohim's people and members of God's family. You have been built on a foundation of the emissaries and the prophets, with the cornerstone being Yeshua the Messiah himself. In union with him, the whole building is held together, and it is growing into a holy temple in union with the Lord. So when we're united together with Yeshua in the midst, we're holding together and building up his temple. Basically, and I know in years past when we talked about the building of the Mishkan and the different planks there, and we brought this out, I think Brad Scott was the one who was talking about how that those planks there is actually ish to ish litola, sister to sister, that they're there. So you're basically standing hand in hand to form the tabernacle. And in 1 Peter 2 and 4, he says, as you have come to him, the living stone, rejected by people, but chosen by God and precious to him, you yourselves as living stones are being built into a spiritual house to be the Kohanim set apart for Elohim to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to him through Yeshua the Messiah. So if we think there, we're called to build up this spiritual house to be priests to offer those sacrifices. But think about, we want to claim that, oh, we're a kingdom of priests. But what did all those priests have to go through in order to be that priest, to go into his presence? It wasn't just every single one of them could do that. They had to go through a purification process. They had a lot of responsibility there, and they had to be living their life a certain way. And they're brought, yeah, they're being brought up and trained during that time, before they, even get there. And one of the last verses in the parasha I want to look at is in Exodus 40 and verse 33. And it says, finally, he erected the courtyard around the tabernacle and the altar and set up the screen for the entrance to the tent of the courtyard. Oops, sorry. For the courtyard in verse 4. And then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of Yah filled the tabernacle. And, if I read it in the different verses, it says he raised up the courtyard all around the dwelling place and all around the altar and placed the covering of the courtyard gate, and Moshe completed the work. And, what's interesting here too is that when you look at this portion, like I said, it's usually read with the portion before by Yahel, and it says, as Yah commanded Moshe. Well, nowhere do we see as Yah commanded Moshe that phrase in scripture, because it was Bezalel who Yah spirit filled and told him how to build the articles. And, it wasn't Moshe that did that. But if we go back to verse 22 in 40:22, it says that Moshe, he put the table in front of the tent of meeting on the side of the tabernacle facing the north outside the curtain. He arranged the row of bread on it before Yah as Yah had ordered Moshe. And, as we go through, we see that Moshe sets the bread on the table, and then it says, as Yah commanded Moshe. And then in verse 24, it says he put the menorah in the tent of the meeting across from the table on the side of the tabernacle facing the south, and he lit the lamps before Yah as Yah had ordered Moshe. So basically, Moshe walks through the Mishkan and he finishes the articles. Even though Bezalel and Olav were the ones that made the articles, Moshe gets credit for the completion of them, because he sets them up and he finishes them with what? He puts the bread there. He lights the menorah. He puts the word in there in the Ark of the Covenant. So he's finishing them by putting there. So think about what this picture is saying. That it is, because when we think about it, it is the Mashiach that is necessary for the completion. The Torah, which is Moshe, is fulfilled, or did Moshe does everything that's commanded by Yah when he brings the bread, the light, and the word into the Mishkan. I'm going to say that again. Moshe, which is Torah, is fulfilled or completed when he brings the bread, the light, and the word into the Mishkan. When he brings, what's the bread, the light, and the word? The Mashiach into the Mishkan. Because without the bread, the light, and the word in there, those were just furniture. It was just a table. It was just a candlestick. But without the light, without the bread, it wasn't fulfilled.
And only one time a year
Did the high priest
that he brought that, when we were talking about
the censer into the holy
the
place?
censer, that,
In the holy
you know,
place, yeah.
because in the Brit Hadashah,
Mhm.
they make it sound like the censer's always there,
In the holy
but
place.
it's only there one time a year. When you look at that.
And so where it says that Moshe completed or he finished the work, that word in Hebrew is kalah. for finished, which that is the same word spelled exactly the same as the word kala. Sorry, kala and kala, both spelled kaf lamed hey. And kala is the word for bride. So think about these two, where it says he finished it or he completed the work. What's the bride completes her husband. This Mishkan is a picture of the bride completing her husband. It's a picture of the two becoming one, because what happens in the Mishkan? Yah's presence comes down and the two become one. And, as Moshe has the responsibility to take all the parts of the Mishkan and put them all together so that his glory can come down. He's the one that completes the bride. And if you think about from a human perspective, can we really even build something holy enough for God's presence to come down into?
No,
I mean, really, no.
no.
But Yah still fills the space. If you look at verse 34, it says, then the cloud covered the tent of meeting and the glory of Yah filled the tabernacle. And Moshe was unable to enter the tent of meeting because the cloud remained on it and the glory of Yah filled the tabernacle. And so, to come into the Holy of Holies, basically the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, he only did that once a year. And he had to lay down his glory, because remember all the frou-frou garments, the ephod, the blue, all of that they were called garments of glory and splendor, were taken off. And when he went into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur, he only wore the white linen garment. And Yah's glory exists when we put down our glory. We got to get to that place where we're putting down our glory so that we can get into that. And, is our temple, is it being set apart where the glory of Yah can fill it? And, one last thing I want to thought about here, and I'll put it is, think about Yeshua in the temple. And I'm going to go to John chapter 2. John chapter 2 and verse 13. And it was almost the time for the festival of Pesach. Wait a minute. We're again at the same time. It's almost time for the festival of Pesach in Yehuda. So Yeshua went up to Jerusalem, and in the temple grounds, he found those who were selling cattle, sheep, pigeons, and others who were sitting at the tables exchanging money. And he made a whip from the cords and he drove them out of the temple. He made a whip. No, he made one. Yep. And the sheep and the cattle as well. He knocked over the money changers' tables, scattering their coins, and the pigeon sellers. He said to them, get these things out of here. How dare you turn my father's house into a market? And his Talmudim later recalled that the Tanakh says, zeal for your house will devour me. And what many people fail to realize is this is not in the temple where this was. It's on the out. Yeah. And so I want to show you, and I'm going to show you exactly where this is. So I pulled up two pictures. I'm going to share here just a second. So this first one right here, I'm going to share. I'm going to show the picture and I'll share it with them. Okay. Can you see that, Debbie?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I see it right now.
Okay. So this is the temple. Okay. And this is what we tend to think of. Now, this is the second temple period. Okay. So when we think about right here, this is the gates here, but this is the outer court. This is the women's court. This is where you had the 4 menorahs. You had the different chambers here. This is where you could have women and all the people come. Okay. And then you had this gate right here, which is called the Nicanor gate. But then you go through and you've got, this is where the laver and the brazen altar is. Okay. That's the priest. Only the priests and Levites could go in this area. Okay. And then going into here, only the priest could go into the holy place. And then only the high priest could go into the Holy of Holies. And I've said this before, the closer you get, the less people. Everybody could go here. Right here, you have priests and Levites. Here you have only Levites. And here you have only the high priest. Okay. Now, this is not where the money changers were. Okay. Now I'm going to stop this just a second. And I'm going to show you another picture just a second. Okay, I'm going to share this second picture just a second. Let me go to my second picture here because I wanted to show you this one because it'll make a little bit more sense. Because that first one I showed you of the temple does not have where the money changers were. Okay. So, oops. No, let me stop sharing just a second. Let me try that again. This one. Okay, can you see it now, Debbie?
Okay.
Okay, so this is the Temple Mount platform. Okay, what I just showed you in that smaller drawing is just this area right here, okay? So that's the outer court. And then you had here, inside that wall is where you had the altar and the laver, and then inside the holy place and Holy of Holies. Where the money changers would have taken place is, notice there's this whole platform right here, okay? They would have been over here because all the people would have been coming up to Jerusalem and going through the mikvaot in the southern excavation, the southern steps here, coming through, and right here inside this is where they would have been. Okay. Now I'm going to stop sharing that just a second and show the others. So what I wanted to show you with that is the whole fact of the money changers, they were on the outer part of the Temple Mount area. And if you notice what we read in John, it said the temple grounds. And why is that important? Because they weren't directly in the temple. You know, we get in our mind, oh, the money changers were inside the temple when they were doing that. No, they were on the outside. They were defiling the temple on the outer rim. What defiled things do we have located around the outside of us that's actually defiling us? It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be on the inner part, but there's lots of things a lot of times we're letting around us or we're getting in our proximity that we should not be doing. And, you know, if you think about what I said at the very beginning of this in John 2:13, notice when the timing of all this happens, it's right at the time of Pesach.
Yeah.
Why? Here we are right now at the same season. And are we being like Yeshua? What would Jesus do? You know, the WWJDs, what did he do? He cleaned out the temple. But he didn't have to go to the inside. He started there on the outskirts where the money changers were, catching it at the gates before it's coming into your hearts. Are we doing the same thing? This is even more so why we're at this time of year that we should be guarding our hearts, analyzing, getting the leaven out, because the leaven is not just what food is leaven. It's what are those things that we're letting in our lives that's basically defiling us and our temple. And like you said, what was he doing? He was being a good priest and guarding the garden. He was making sure that was guarded. So,
It would have been something to play with it.
so
That's more lavender.
yes. Okay.
You know,
So that's
he was supposed to guard me up. Yeshua showing the example he was going. Amen. That was,
so think about that. You know, this is the whole point of this season is to be looking at our own lives and analyzing ourselves. And I've been doing that. I've been looking, and there have been things I've been having to get out of my life
I've been helping her.
and having to clean up and yeah, so that's it.
So, amen. You know, that was good. That was good.
Really good.
So, you know, that's the one thing. All these things are lessons for us. They're lessons for us to see, to apply, to somebody. Why do you keep on going over the same thing every year? Well, this is the reason. We need to hear it. We need to get it in our mind. We need to get it in our heart. It needs to be a part of our DNA. It needs to be a part of who we are. That's why Yeshua says we should be different. We should be a new creature. He didn't say a perfect creature, because he said you can even be mad or angry and sin not, if you can handle that type of thing. So we all have to put it in perspective. So that was good. If everybody wants to get together, we'll have the blessing. I'm gonna get my to Amen. Yeberekaka Yahava Virishmereya Yair Yahava Peneva Ileka Vehuneka Yesa Yahava Pinaveleka Vayishim Leka Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face to shine on you and show you his favor. May Yahweh lift up his face towards you and give you peace. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, Sar Shalom. Go in peace. Amen.
Amen.